Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. It's been a couple weeks, but I am back ready to do a live stream and decided to take it easy on myself and only do some new watch reveals that have come out. There are actually 4 that we will go ahead and go over. They're not all going to be new. Most of them are going to be different dials or different metal combinations for the casework, things like that. But we'll go through them all and we'll see what you all think of them. Housekeeping items. So as I noted, and I'd pre-announced it and I put a comment out, so hopefully no one was expecting it, but wasn't able to do a live stream on Saturday. Well, I technically could have, but I had a work conference in Anaheim the week before, or that week of, I guess, technically. And to play it safe, because I wasn't sure when I would get back the day before, I went ahead and canceled trying to put that together, which was actually ultimately very smart because I did not get home until early Saturday morning, thanks to weather on the return flight. So I actually did something smart for once. And so now we are ready to go ahead and continue. No pre-recorded videos since a couple weeks ago. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to go ahead and we'll dive into the topics. Oh, on the wrist today is the Patek Philippe Gondolo. I forget the reference. I think it's like the 21. Well, I was about to say like 2124J, but I think I started saying an ETA movement number because I am very, very rusty at it. So actually taking a quick look here, I have a list. I can't ever remember these model numbers. I know some people memorize all the Rolex numbers and all the Patek numbers, but I do not. 5124J. That's what it is, not 21. 5124J, if you are curious. One of their Art Deco designs, it is discontinued, though the gondola line continues to exist. I think mostly as women's watches that are 6 figures because they stick a bunch of diamonds on them. So let me go ahead and greet chat really quickly. Patrick with Pocket Watch Time is early. I did see this early, but I still refused to start the stream early. And was it out of spite or was it out of habit? We may never really know, but glad that you could be here. Kevin, good morning. Welcome to the live stream. And Oscar, good morning to you as well. Hope things are going really well. And Duncan, thank you, Duncan. And thank you, Duncan, for being a 99-cent club member. Standard plug, that is in the description of the video, as is a link to the Discord if you like to textually chat about watches, and links to all of the articles that we will be using today. Patrick is pretty sure that I did it out of spite, and he is probably 90% correct. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will start with an article from Monochrome. So Rado, I think Rado is a relatively big brand name in India, if I remember being told correctly. I've looked at a number of Rado models. It's in the Swatch group, but I've never owned any of them. But the Captain Cook is, I was going to say it's their most famous. I think it's their most famous nowadays. I think they revived the Captain Cook dive watches around 2017 or so. But that was it. The Diastars, they're pretty popular as well, or at least pretty well known. But anyway, dive watches are always the most popular sports watch. So as you can see, the article describes as new gradient dials for their 39 millimeter Captain Cook. That's a little bit burying the lead. It's more like 39 millimeters is finally an option in Captain Cook. It's technically not the first 39 millimeter Rado. Captain Cook, I think just a few weeks ago, they issued a limited edition model, but this is now part of the main collection. And for those that don't know, I think the article touches on this. I think standard Rados are usually 41 millimeter. I think the ceramic stuff's 43 millimeter, and they're very well known for their ceramic. It's probably the most affordable non-micro brand ceramic that you can readily get, where we're talking like cases and bracelets available. And not just in the Captain Cook line. And they also have 37 millimeter models as well. So these are gradient dials. So as you can see, the color starts to change, to darken as you move towards the edge of the bezel, towards the chapter ring. And here's a good example. So there are 2 colorways. There's this sort of light blue. It starts sort of a white, really kind of an Arctic. This colorway reminds me a lot of what we've seen out of Seiko on some of their models that they've done, though the ones that come to my mind are more limited editions. And then this is probably the one that's going to sell better, which again, you see that sort of burst of white right at the center, and then you start with a brighter shade of blue, and then you darken. This one actually gradients out dark very, very quickly. Once you move past where the hour markers are, it's essentially black, at least according to these images that we've seen. I've always been, I can't say a fan of, but I've been fond of the Captain Cook look. I think it's because I like the sort of sloped angle they apply to the bezel, which I think is a really attractive style. And of course, the broad hour hand. They're not the only brand that does a broad hour hand. Of course, there are plenty of others where that is available. But overall, it's a decent looking watch. I never, for whatever reason, I've never gone with it. I think at the time when I was most seriously, personally considering Captain Cook's, I ended up getting a Zodiac instead, and just went a different way. And I so rarely wear dive watches that I've never really revisited them. I've revisited Rado, but not for the Captain Cook. I have explored some other options. Price-wise, I want to think this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 Swiss francs, 2,200 Swiss francs. So not an inexpensive watch. This is powered by the Powermatic 80. And again, this is not in their ceramic casework. So if you're interested in a more exotic or different style of casing, that's not the case here. I've loaded this up to quickly see the stats. So 12 millimeters thick. I already told you it's 39 millimeters in diameter. It's just under 46 millimeters lug to lug. So a very wearable size. I actually like the size quite a bit. 41 as a general rule, I think is just fine for me for a dive watch. 43, I get a little on edge about. I've had 43s and 44s before. They, even if the lug to lug isn't obscene, they do wear large and they're meant to. But it's not something I'm particularly fond of. These do have 300 meters of water resistance though. So, I mean, they are very robust in that regard. And then they call it the Caliber R763, but it's a Powermatic 80. So your usual kind of lower tier Swatch Group, long power reserve movement style that you're going to go ahead and get. So overall, I think this is I think it's more interesting that they've permanently cataloged the 39. And you could argue that they didn't really need to, given they've got I was wrong. It's not 41s. They got 42. So they've got 42s, 37s, and 43s. And now 39s, and it's starting to feel a little like Tudor, where we have to have a black bay in every 2 millimeters, we get a new black bay, but it doesn't hurt anything. I think case looks good. I think the bracelet looks good. I have no experience with how this bracelet wears. I've had bracelets like this before, but not quite identical to this. So I won't remark on that. Close case back, which is good with the Powermatic 80. There's really nothing to see there. So you just get some fun little seahorses. And overall, I like both of these dials. I personally like this darker one best, which again, I think most people will. The lighter one starts to run into that realm of summertime watch, where again, when you're paying over $2,000, I'm not sure what the conversion will be, but if it's 2,200 Swiss francs, it's going to be even more in the US. I'm not sold on personally spending that much money for a dial like this. So, all right. So anyway, I wanted to go ahead and get that one out of the way, but at least I know Rado. I don't know Unimatic. Am I saying it right, or is it Unimatic? Unimatic. I should have looked it up ahead of time, but you see, it's Italian, so maybe I just need to say it with a really bad Italian accent. But I'm not going to do that, at least not right now. So they've added a bunch of watches, and I do mean a bunch. They added 9 to their Diving Heritage collection. So it's a lot to go over. Just the best way to explain it, and the link in the show notes is to the, I should say video description, sorry, podcast habits, will be to the Hodinkee article on this. But you can see here what they did is they've got three dial colors, and you can have those 3 dial colors in one of 3 ways. You can have them as a GMT watch, which is what's on the screen. You can have them as a regular time telling, just no fancy complication, time only watch. I don't think it even has a date, time only. And then there's also a chronograph, but you got black, brown, blue, and it's the same black, brown, and blue on all of them. It's just you got 3 different complication packages and 3 different colorways, thus 9 different models. Again, I'm not super familiar with this brand. I've heard of it before. I've never handled one. I've never seen one in person to my knowledge. Like if someone was wearing one and I didn't notice, there's a possibility there. Very vintage style look. This brown one, for example, very much gives me Baltic bronze brown vibes. I do have a bronze brown aquascaphe from Baltic, and everything about the choices here screams vintage. So the loom is designed to look like aged radium. You've got this very dark brown dial. The font feels very 50s to me, going around the bezel. And while this is the time only model, which you might describe as the dive model, because this does have 300 meters of water resistance. These GMT models, which are also 300 meters of water resistance, you can see the bezel is labeled for the 24-hour indicator, but it's that same style of font, that same old-timey font. They hollowed out. This is an interesting choice. I don't actually like this look very much, but they hollowed out the GMT arrow. I mean, it fits with the theme, but I'm not. I think the GMT is probably maybe my least favorite look to it. I think the regular watch, the time only dive watch, is probably the one I like the best. And then they got the chronographs. So, all right, by default, these aren't. They're cropping circles, so I'm not really bothered by that. And so you've got it's a creative kind of look. I don't know why. I don't know why one would want one. You'd have to probably really like the aesthetic. I don't know why one would want the chronograph. I just have no interest in it. But again, they got 300 meters wire resistance even on the chronograph. So it's basically the same watch in all instances. It's just a question of the complications that you might like. I do like the creativity of the sort of that old fashioned dial look where we've got triangles, rectangles, and circles. They're fun shapes. It's simple. I don't understand all the text is below the handset. It's all at the 6 o'clock. So there's a balance issue there. And so while I like the hour markers, I like the font choice for a vintage throwback, and I like the shapes used for the hour markers. I don't understand the lack of balance to the dial with everything being down towards the 6 o'clock position. So to me, that they all look lopsided because it's the same dial layout for all of them in terms of how we're presenting all the information about the watch. So as you can see, every single one is like that, and it's not terrible. They pulled it off a lot better than I thought it would look if you had described it to me on paper. Like if ChatGPT was trying to write out what this dial was going to look like on any of these 3 models, I said I was going to absolutely hate this. I do not. I think it's okay, but only okay. Now pricing, I'm not sure because it's going to vary, I'm sure, based off of these models. So let's see. They're all 41.5 millimeters in diameter, so very wearable, a little over 13 millimeters thick, except one of the models is only 12.9 millimeters thick. I'm assuming the U3 is the time only, the dive watches. Again, the thickness isn't surprising with the 300 meters of water resistance. NH35 movement, so absolutely nothing to write home about for the basic watch, and NH34A for the GMT, and then they use a Mecha quartz for the chronograph. So that's going to help contain the pricing down. So the price is €625 for everything except the GMT watch, which is 750 euro. The prices aren't unreasonable for these. They are limited to 300 units each. I'm sure each colorway. So there's a lot of these. The NH35, like I don't know what you guys think. Like I don't see a lot of micro brands using the NH35 anymore. It's like why would you settle for such an archaic movement at this point? You don't get to call it Swiss made. So you might as well jump to Sellita if you cared about that. And Miyota has a lot better spec'd movements that are pretty respected in terms of robustness. So I guess I'm not feeling it. The price is okay-ish. I mean, I know people were criticizing the price of those new Casio edifices with the NH35 movements, but those are a better price than these. And I honestly think that they look a little bit better too overall. It's okay. I think it looks all right, but I don't know. The brown one is probably the most boring. The black one's going to be the most versatile. The blue one, I think, in most of these configurations looks like the most fun. Depends on the angle. Like, I don't really like it in this shot where it seems more of a green blue. I don't know. It wouldn't be for me, but I suppose this does have me kind of wondering what else they have in their catalog. I don't think these are the only Heritage divers they've got in the Heritage collection. I think it just added 9 more watches to the Heritage collection. So anyway, it is what it is. But let's see what the chat thinks. Patrick thinks that the brown, and I'm sure it was back when I had this great shot of this brown dive version, is poop like the brown is poop like sad tear rolling down face. Okay. Maybe it looks better in brighter light. That's about the brown is a tricky color. I like brown. It's very hard to pull off. Like Tudor has I never owned it, but Tudor had a Black Bay bronze the first one they ever did with that tropical dial, the tropical brown. I always thought it looked pretty good. I do have a brown I don't think it's this dark. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's just as poopy. I like my Baltic bronze brown. I like the brown shade on that. But brown, yeah, you run the risk of it looking like poop, like literally like stool. And so, and that's not something people generally want on their wrist. So because of that, it's very, very difficult. I think part of the issue is perhaps the radium that they're trying to go with. But again, they're trying to do this throwback look here and have it look very, very vintage. Because the loom is the same shade on all three of them. So, it is what it is, I suppose. But I agree. I don't think normally if brown's executed really well, like maybe if it had been bronze, maybe if the case had been bronze, it would have helped the brown out, but it's not. And so it's my least favorite of the three as well. Or I should say is my least. You didn't say it was your least favorite. I'm just assuming, given the poopiness of it, that it was. Duncan thinks the same thing, that the brown looks like poop. He also thinks the Unimatic case looks very flat, and that the Rado looked a lot better. As a reminder, these were the Rados that we were talking about. Yes, the Rado's case is a lot more intricate, and right now we're comparing dive watch to dive watch, both with 300 meters of water resistance. But bear in mind that you're going to pay almost like $2,000 more for the Rado, so you do get what you pay for, even in this world to some degree. Koji, welcome to live stream, and thank you for being a club member. Asks, what's the Italian word for meh? I don't know. Maybe it's meh. Do you have to talk with your hands? Is that a rule in Italy? Probably not. That's probably a vicious stereotype. Patrick says he agrees. The Rado looks better. I agree as well. I like basically everything about the Rado more, other than not a big fan of having the date on the Rado, and all of these Unimatics seem to have avoided a date. Though I will ask a question: does it really make sense to? Because I'm going to say it does not. Does it really make sense to have a GMT watch with no date? Because you're tracking 2 time zones, and knowing what your local one is and what date it is seems to. Obviously you can do it. Here they are. They've done it here, but I really question the idea of doing a GMT without having a date on it. I find it from a practical standpoint, I find it a little weird. That's like the sort of thing though Parmigiani would have done easily. In fact, they probably did do it on their GMT watch. Well, let's go to something that's much more attractive. Your mileage may vary, but I actually thought this was pretty cool, so I wanted to talk about it. I actually saw like 5 articles on this. It's so funny to me because Credor is buying new Credor in the United States is very difficult. I think there's one dealer. It's the Grand Seiko boutique in New York City. I think is the only official Credor dealer in the United States. Whereas Grand Seiko is quite easy to find in the United States. There's a store near me that's got Grand Seiko here in Kansas City. But all right, so they've released the GBC F999. This is another limited edition watch, but it's in their Goldfeather line. Now, the Goldfeather line, for those that aren't really familiar with Credor, and I'm not particularly familiar, but since I've done more research on it, Credor generally nowadays plays in 2 spaces. This wasn't always true. They generally play in spring drive, and they play in mechanical. Goldfeather is a mechanical line that they tend to do, especially thin mechanical movements. But that's kind of what now Credor in its history, they've got plenty of affordable quartz watches, and they, originally when the brand came out, they were precious metal only, no steel. That is not true anymore. They've reinvented themselves repeatedly over the years as they tried to find their place in the Seiko catalog, because Seiko, the conglomerate, owns Credor. So anyway, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. Now I need to open with the price. The price, this is monochrome again, so we're going to have it like in euros, maybe in euros, 190,000 euros. I believe the US price, US dollars, is around 220 to 225,000 US dollars. So there are only 10 of these watches that are being made. I believe the same guy is doing the hand work on all 10 dials, which, I me's only 10, so of course, why not? This is powered by one of their in-house movements. It's called the 6850, but it's a small watch. It's only 8.6 millimeters thick. So it only has 60-hour power reserve, but you have to understand just how thin this watch is. And so it's what is it, 38.6 millimeters in diameter. And this is a platinum cased watch. But the dial is really interesting because it's sort of, I mean, I have to cheat. I have to look here because they had so many different things going on. So I'll highlight it, but then we'll zoom in on it so we can actually just appreciate it. But so they did a lacquer. The dial base is a black lacquer. And then they have like these gold plate and mother of pearl applications. And there are terms for that. There was, I don't know if it's in this article, but there's another article I saw that named all the Japanese art styles that were being used on this and craftsmanship styles. And then you've got the gold hands. And then they've done like some gold flaking into some aspects of it. And then you have a tourbillon, which is not a complication I in any way like, but they've open worked it. And in fact, the tourbillon, as you can see here, the whole thing is configured. The tourbillon looks like a bird. So you see these like hand painted birds all over this dial. The added bonus points for this being in the Goldfeather line. I'm sure that was in some way deliberate. But you have these where you've got this mix of like mother of pearl work for these birds. And then you've got all this, you got the gold hands. You've got this, like, I think this is all gold in here. Maybe it's also mother of pearl. It's a whole thing. It's just a whole thing going on. And while I'm always frustrated with tourbillons because they don't serve any practical function in wristwatches. Like I don't know any tourbillon watches that are like blowing away the accuracy versus non-tourbillon watches. The idea that they made it just like a giant like killer bird of prey with all of these other birds on. I'm sure these aren't supposed to be like Klingon birds of prey, but this one is a Klingon bird of prey. It fits the overall theme of it just being this giant bird thing. And when I first saw it, it reminded me of when Rolex had the celebration dial, right? With the little bubbles. Everyone got excited about the Dippin' Dots dial. This is a lot more interesting than the Dippin' Dots dial. I actually like the Dippin' Dots dial just fine from Rolex. I didn't like the emoji watch. I thought that was a bridge too stupid to really get behind. But the Dippin' Dots dial looked fun. I mean, it wasn't for me, but it was attractive. This is very interesting. I don't think, even if I had the money, I can't imagine I would ever own it because I'm just not really into birds enough. But the craftsmanship behind it is really, really cool. It's kind of interesting because the only thing I ever see in the media about Credor anymore is the expensive stuff. It's all this style of stuff that nobody can afford. So, I mean, again, it's probably worth talking about just because it's so different than anything else. I mean, the thing about that I like about Credor, not having owned a Credor watch, I believe Patrick with Pocket Watch Time owns a couple or has owned a couple from the videos I've seen of his in the past, is Credor embraces on so many of their watches this Japanese design philosophy better than basically any other brand. Again, I know, like, Seiko will have like their JDM models and Citizen will have JDM models, and those are more oriented to domestic market. And for them, domestic is Japanese. But there's so many design choices all throughout their catalog and their history that Credor does that it's just like, this is not anything that was ever gone through some sort of Western market analysis. It's through and through just stuff they came up with. And it doesn't feel trite in the same way like, hey, look, I looked out my window and this, on the month of February, on the day of the 16th, and the light hits, Mount Iwari or whatever one that they always cite with Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko, it almost feels forced. It almost feels like AI. They tell AI, here's a new watch, tie some Japanese nature thing into this so that we can explain why we created it. The dials look cool, but the stories are terrible. And in this, what's the story? I think the story is this is a bunch of like 3 or 4 different Japanese artistic styles that are applied to one dial. That's all the story you needed. At 225,000, I'm guessing that's enough, but maybe not. Maybe it's like, I need a better story once we cross the 200,000 point. But for me, it's not, the story's not all that important. I actually thought about doing a video where we go over, maybe we'll do it as a live stream, talking about what's the value of story and the emphasis that some of the brands are now trying to do at the expense of craftsmanship. But it's the craftsmanship that's interesting here, not the story. So anyway, I just thought it was a really cool idea. Even though I don't love the dial look, I do really like everything that they put into it. Like it's definitely whatever. There was an artist and they had a vision and they've had their vision executed. And so for that, I respect the concept of it. Overall, though, it's a pretty good looking watch. Not the most practical for telling time, however. All right, Patrick says that Credor would be great if it wasn't for the rainbow birds. So is it the rainbow-esque motif of the birds that bother you, or is it just like it's the birds themselves, or is it the combination? Like you could get behind birds, but not if they're a rainbow of birds, or you could get behind a rainbow, like a Daytona rainbow, but not like with birds on it. Like where's the line? Where must the line be drawn? I kind of see it. They don't actually, they do touch on almost all the colors, but I did like how it was like, it's not in a rainbow order. Like you notice like all these like red ones are on the interior. So I'm thinking they're going to do like Roy G. Bivet, right? So then orange would be next, but there isn't really any. I mean, red, orange is kind of together, but then they've got the blues interspersed with the greens, and then they've got the purples. So it's a little, I don't know. They tried to do some patterning to it I think to avoid contrast, but I wondered if these red ones are supposed to be flying out from this side, sort of gold there from the bird of, we're going to call it the bird of prey. They're flying out from the bird of prey to go and, I don't know, do things to the Federation, maybe. Let's see. Koji says the feathers on the movement, very nice touch. Oh yes, the movement. I should have shown you guys a shot of the movement because so you've got some more of the gold work here. The engraving work. The feathers and completely fits in with the theme, but the engraving work on this, again, it's nice to have a reprieve from Geneva stripes. Let's not lose sight of the German version, Glashütte striping, which I can't tell the difference. I've been collecting for quite a while now. I cannot tell you the difference between Geneva striping and Glashütte striping. I think I read that the claim is the Glashütte makes the abrasions deeper, so there's more texture. They're more aggressive in terms of one's more worn down than the other versus the Geneva approach, which is a little lighter. But quite frankly, I couldn't tell you. So Koji actually said before that remark that the green turban snail shell is a Japanese affectation that even I wasn't aware of. Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, no, and there was, I don't remember. I don't think it was the Hodinkee article may have the details. Actually, I pulled this one for the photos. It does look like they have some of this, like the maquille, Radane. I'm sorry. I can't remember Japanese. I never knew Japanese pronunciation. Okay. So they have some, I read a different articles that went over a lot of these, the Yakugai. All right. All sorts of interesting stuff. But, anyway, it's a very, very cool watch. Unfortunately, it's so expensive that there's a better shot, I think, of the movement, so you can really appreciate it. I love a good looking movement. This movement, I would like on any watch. I don't even care if it has anything to do with birds or not. It can have a feather in the movement. I would be fine with it. Patrick notes that my Klingon reference gets a star. I do appreciate it. Thank you. D7 Katinga Vorcha. Are we? I'm not sure what the D7 is. Sorry, my Star Trekness only goes so deep. If that's even Star Trek. Duncan says, way on my price range by 100 times, but I can't see the point of tourbillons, but I actually quite like this. Patrick clarified that it's a combination. He don't like birds. Apparently a Hitchcock trauma victim, I do understand, and doesn't like rainbow watches. So also a double rainbow YouTube guy trauma victim. So I do understand. Because those traumas do run deep. Speaking of running deep, let's stick with our expensive watch theme and jump to the final one that I have for you guys. It's got to be Lange, okay? So, no, it doesn't have to be. It could have been anything, but another Hodinkee article. So, Lange Söhne, I think I said the last article was Hodinkee. It is not as monochrome. Hodinkee was my Unimatic article, but I did Hodinkee here as well. So, they've got the Zeitwerk date. It's now in pink gold. That's really all the news is. I could not remember if the Zeitwerk has been done in gold before, but this is the first time it's been done in pink gold. Yes, it has been. It's been done in white gold. I thought it had been. So white gold was priced at $132,000. What is this one priced at? $132,000, which is what you would expect because white gold and yellow gold and pink gold generally cost the same amount of money because it's just a blend of the alloys that changes the colorway. You're still at 75% gold. 37 millimeter watch, only 9 millimeters thick, 72-hour power reserve. These are hand wind only models and beat at 2.5 hertz. And again, talking about movement finishing, here you go. Here's some of that Glashütte striping I was just referencing. They do hand engrave the balance cocks over at Lange. They do that on all the models. Glashütte Original also likes to hand engrave on that piece. However, they do not do it on every model. I thought originally they did. However, I think if you look at like the 1960s model and such, they don't. But they do it on, I think they do it on the Senators and they do it on the Pano line. And maybe some of the other lines. I don't know if they do it on the 70s model or not, but we're not really here to talk about Geo. Hand wind movements I always like quite a bit. And one of the nice things about the Zeitwerk is there's actually quite a bit to see. One of the frustrations that someone might have with the German aesthetic that a brand like Lange normally will embrace is the 3/4 plate. So with the 3/4 plate, you see a lot of striping, but you don't get to see a lot of the going train or anything like that. Here, obviously, you can see things like the crown wheel, I'm not even sure what some of these parts are actually. It must be some of the stuff for the dates, right? Because this has got to be the ratchet wheel, and I would assume this is the crown wheel, but the crown's over here. So, okay, it's gearing so that the crown wheel can be spun because this is not centered with the crown. So that would make sense. It is easy enough to engineer out once we followed our line and our through line, but this is not even the part people really look at a lot. But the finishing is there. Lots of anglage and stuff. Lange does a great job, even on the more affordable watches. This obviously is not a more affordable watch. And affordable in the world of Lange is a very loose term that we use. But the Zeitwerk, I've always thought this is a really cool idea as a watch. I don't know that I would ever, even if I had the money, if I would go this particular route, but I like it in this pink gold better than I do in white. And so I'm gonna note it just because I think Lange does a pink or a rose gold very, very well. It's a very warm metal. Depending on what you do with it, it can to some people look overly feminine. But what I like about Lange is they'll often balance it out with a lot of frosting. So frosted silvers can look really good. But here, this gray, I think, really tones it down a lot and gives you good contrast because you've got these actual digital display aspects that are in stark white. So overall, I think it's a really clean execution of an already very well-designed watch. And so I just wanted to end with it because I thought it was probably the least controversial, visually impressive watch. I knew the Credor would be more debated because it had a bunch of birds on it. But plus, it was a new announcement, and there really wasn't a lot of things to say. So, all right, let's go ahead and see what you all have to say. Patrick notes that watch collecting is trauma-inducing. Well, we all have a lot of baggage that we have to carry. The nice thing about watches is they easily fit in the baggage, so it has that going for it. But that's also one of the issues about watch collecting that can be traumatizing is you never really run out of space for watches. You can always find a place to squirrel a watch away. Underachieving Watch Collector, thank you for being on the live stream. So save the best for last. Well, I'm glad you like this one. I was less excited to talk about this one than the Credor because the Credor was so different. It had so many new artistic methods. I mean, not new. Those artistic methods from Japan are well established. It's the first time I had seen them in a watch or had read about them. Period, because I'm not versed in Japanese art in any way, shape, or form. But Lange is. Like if I have to pick what my favorite big brand is, it's all Lange Söhne. It remains my favorite. The design aesthetic that they take aligns with my brain better than anyone else. It's like if I were to my favorite Swiss brand would probably be Parmigiani Fleurier at the stage under the new leadership. That very minimalist style. Almost a Laurent Ferrier, but I actually think Parmigiani's look is better than Laurent Ferrier, though the finishing, I'm sure, is quite a bit better on the Laurents. Here, though, overall, I skew German on design choices. The Lange 1, I think the Saxonia looks really, really good. It's not my favorite of that more minimal, you're comparing everything at that stage to a Calatrava, but I think I've thought about getting a Saxonia. I like and they even had some really great rectangular watches. They don't make them anymore, but they had some really nice looking ones. But there are a lot of brands that do some really good, nice. Anyway, I like the brand. I'll just put it that way. I like the brand's aesthetic. I don't like all the brand's practices and the games they even play on people who want to get steel. But thankfully for me, I tend to like their precious metal stuff. Koji says, "Mein Gott, that is pretty spectacular." I quit saying it in German after that. Koji said, "I think the watch itself is much larger, 44 millimeters. This is a big boy." Yes. Yes, 44.2 and 12.3 millimeters thick, which that's not particularly thick when you consider the complicated. I mean, because bear in mind, we've got all of these discs that need to be accommodated for the digital aspect. And it looks like two of them are on the same plane. Here's a better angle. So you can see the 5 and the 7 are on the same plane. So those are going to be discs that are probably about that big and then about that big. And then the 2 is sunken, which again is common with all Lange Söhne. That bothers some people because you can see from the angle, it is noticeable. At a distance, you wouldn't really notice it if it works anywhere like their normal pano, or excuse me, their big dates. I shouldn't say a pano date. Pano is technically a term GO uses for their large date, but up close, it is quite noticeable. That three-dimensionality to it, because they wanted to be able to stack the discs to solve their problem of where to place them. Duncan says, "This makes no sense to me. Why go to the bother of making hours and minutes digital only to give up and just throw an analog small seconds in there? I do like the date indicator though." So I think twofold. One, this is based off of some clock, right? Like a German opera house clock or something. I don't know. They had a small seconds on the opera house clock. I think the issue is twofold. This is my guess, Duncan. I have no idea. I've not done the research to find out if the designer ever explained what the thought was, because this wasn't one of the initial models that came out when the brand was revived in the mid 90s. But let's go back to Unimatic. And one of the things I pointed out with this, like, where's the balance? Why you have this interesting, I think, well-balanced dial, except for the text. Unimatic, made in Italy, 300 meters water resistance. It's all at the 6 o'clock position. There's nothing up top to counterweigh it. And it's not terrible. It actually looked better than I thought it would when I heard about it. But you still, once you see it, you're like, why is it? Is it trying to add weight to offset that this is a triangle and the 6 o'clock is a rectangle? Is that what they're trying to do? Was that the logic? Because it's further up than the triangle is. Lange has a power reserve indicator at the top of the dial. What's going to counterbalance it? So I think that's part of the reason why they're like, we're going to put a small seconds on here, because otherwise you have a tremendous amount of white space unless you find something else to put there. Could you put something else there? Yes, you could put a moon phase, would be an example. But if you look at the Saxonia line, Lange often will do the small seconds and they'll crop the top half out and they'll do this on the Lange ones as well, and let the moon phase be with the small seconds. It'll just be another layer. So you see some of the small seconds and then you see the moon phase up at the top of it. So if you wanted to balance without the small seconds, you could do it. You'd get rid of the power reserve, but now you have a lot of white space for just displaying. And then we can talk about like that bathroom scale looking revival that Cartier did at Watches and Wonders this year, or even the one I liked a little bit more, the one from Bremont, where it's a tremendous amount of white space where you just have like brushed case. Like what would you do with it? So the small seconds is the easy answer, especially because of how they're doing a pointer indicator for the power reserve. The other reason why I think they would do a small seconds is it's a nice way to let everyone know that the movement is mechanical, which is, I know some people that absolutely hate the idea of mechanical watches with only hours and minutes, because it doesn't prove to people that you didn't just buy a quartz watch. Now, I like watching secondhand sweep, so I generally prefer having a small seconds or a central seconds, some sort of moving seconds hand on mechanical watches. But I have been okay with watches that do not. Again, aforementioned brand from Switzerland that I really like, Parmigiani Fleurier, their Tonda PFs that they currently make with the micro rotors, they do not put seconds hands on those. They're mechanical and they show hours and minutes, and then maybe a Retroponte or hidden GMT hand or whatever you want. And I think it's a pretty sleek looking watch. But a lot of people like to prove, especially if you have a digital display, people would be confused about what this is. Is this time? Is this saying 7:52 in the morning? Or is this is it a date? And then I don't know what the 52 means. I don't know. But those are just guesses. Koji asks, how heavy is your Lange one on the wrist, Dennis? Like I've never weighed it. It's heavy. It is my heaviest strap watch easily. When I got other watches later on, when I bought my Lange one, I'd never owned a precious metal watch before. So when I felt it and I felt how heavy it was, I thought, wow, the gold really does add a lot of weight. However, since owning a Parmigiani Kalpa Tonda, one of their older Tondas, my Breguet Classique, not Breguet, yeah, Breguet Classique. So I have 3 precious metal watches. They're all gold precious metal. They're all 18 karat. Nothing is as heavy as the Lange one. So yeah, it's heavy. You notice it on the wrist. You notice it, despite its modest size. It's a little over 10 millimeters thick, though. It's not as thick as this. Patrick notes that the digital seconds would take so much power. Yes, and that's part of why I think they felt they needed to have the power reserve. So hence why they wanted to balance it. Why give up we could talk about putting the power reserve on the back or whatnot, but if you're wearing the watch, you don't want it to run out of power. It's a hand wind only watch, remember. So it really makes sense to have the power reserve. And as Patrick has noted, this with the cycling of just the hours and minutes takes significant power. That's why they want you to be aware of it. And that's why there's the red here is the warning that this off AUF is full charge. AB is empty. So when it wants you to know that the watch in the red zone may start to have issues. So yes, you'd have to leave off the seconds. Would be. I don't think it's in any way. I mean, don't get me wrong. We take some like Ulysse Nardon tech or something, or something out of Panerai, one of the super long power reserve things. I'm sure there's a way, and Lange maybe will do a way. Maybe they've done a way, and I don't know about it. I don't normally read up on the Zeitwerk because they're so expensive, but it's just imagine that click, that's constant disc cycling. I couldn't fathom doing it without a battery. I just couldn't. And I think a battery would run dead too quick too. I think you'd have to have a solar powered system of some sort. And I can't imagine it staying charged. So anyway, long story short, it's like they could give up the seconds entirely pretty easily, but they feel they have to have the power reserve because honestly, this configuration with this part here moving every minute, it's a lot of power when you think of most watches only have a disc jump once a day. It's very significant. Frank, welcome to the stream. How do you read that? How is the date determined? Okay, so the way it works is here's the hours on the left at the 9 o'clock position. So this is 7, and then this is the minute. So that's 7:52. And then the date is what's in red. So it's the 12th. There's a red thing. This is actually hollow, and there's the chapter ring's hollow. And so there's a little red indicator, and it hops every day. So it would be the 13th, 14th, 15th. And you can tell because it goes all the way around to 31. And then for the rest of it, obviously small seconds is down at the 6 o'clock position. And then this is the power reserve indicator. And then the winding mechanism is up at what we call the 3 o'clock position. So that's how you read the Zeitwerk. But anyway, I think it's a pretty cool looking watch, but and this is like, I didn't even notice this originally. This is like it is on the Lange one. This is the quick set for the date. So you just push the button and it'll hop the indicator. On the Lange one, it hops most of the time they use a big date function. So anyway, and then it's all just driven by this manual wind only movement. They could obviously have gone automatic if they wanted, but given it's already over 12 millimeters thick, I think that they felt that it would be better to show off the movement more and just let you hand wind it. Because I don't even know if how well wrist movement would keep something like this charged. I don't know. I've never really handled anything like it. But $132,000. Yeah. Anyway, not on my buy list, but I love the pink gold with the slate gray. I've really wanted a gold gray case. Unfortunately, this is way too high for me to want to buy. But because I've really struggled to find a lot of especially like a pink gold or a rose gold against a dark gray. Because, you know, as longtime viewers know, gray is like my favorite dial color. I try not to have everything gray, but Chopard had a model of their LUC that it's one of my favorites that has that look. JLC has done it in the Master Control line a little bit, so I've enjoyed that as well. Looking at those, I've considered some of those. I'm trying to think if anyone else has really done anything. Vacheron has, but mostly as patrimonies, and I don't like the pencil hands on the patrimony. I've seen traditionals with the look, but only limited editions. So anyway, but we're not here to really cry about that. So Wristful Ignorance says, nice watch. Yes, it is a very nice watch. I'm sure Lange will sell quite a few of them. Patrick says, I do love the German silver movement. Yes, the nice thing about that I like about the German silver with the Langes is it's very warm looking. Like this picture is doing a pretty good job giving it justice. It's surprisingly warm as it ages, as it oxidizes. And it doesn't, again, my model is an older model and it doesn't look like dirty. It just looks, warmth is how I would describe it. It just looks really, really warm. And Wristful notes that German movements are really lovely. They can be, but man, most of the ones I've seen are. I mean, when I think about it, Nomos, Glashütte Original, and all Lange Söhne, I think all do very nice looking movements. And they all tend to basically follow the quote unquote German aesthetic to some degree. I'd say Nomos looks maybe a little more Swiss in approach overall, but it's a very well finished movement, especially for the price point. All right, that's it for this live stream. I should be back next weekend with another live stream. We might do a more theoretical topic or intellectual or however we want to, like, not just talking about new releases. Maybe we'll take a topic of discussion, maybe the state of the luxury watch industry, or maybe, I don't know. I saw LVMH had their sales numbers. I have not read over the report for their second quarter. All I saw is they were down. So maybe tear into something like that. I haven't decided yet. Maybe there'll be a bunch of new watches that'll be worth talking about. Or we could talk about those, what is it, the GPHC nominees? I guess we could do that. I don't know. I haven't looked at them yet. But I know Thomas over with the Escapement Show just did a live stream talking about those watches. But that's it for me. I'm going to go work on some pinball. So I will talk to you all next time, and I hope you all have a really good weekend. Take care.